So today we're going to start to look at how nature and the outdoors can really start to support you and your family as we emerge from lockdown. Before we start looking at the practical activities, I just wanted to explain a little bit more about how we at Wild for Life see the opportunities for using nature and why nature is so important in all of this. In the last 50 years, there's been an increase in urbanisation across the UK. And this has coincided with a technological revolution whereby all now of us have access to information 24/7. A recent Ofcom study highlighted that children aged 5 to 15 spend on average 2 hours 11 minutes a day on some form of electronic device. And this is likely to have increased amongst younger children during the pandemic because more learning, homeschooling, contact with family and friends has all been done online. A National Trust survey in 2018 found that children on average spend more than 50% less time outdoors than their parents did, at just over 4 hours a week. More time online has led to changes in our children's behaviour. Many now look to devices for their entertainment and stimulation. They seek pleasure from accessing online content and less time accessing outdoor spaces in the natural world. If we combine this with the more narcissistic tendencies fueled by social media these days, where we see children using the number of likes to determine their self-worth, it's no wonder that we're experiencing more mental health problems, more stress, anxiety and fear in our children than ever before. But this pause that the pandemic has created in our lives has given us a unique window of opportunity to really profit emotionally from this time and to build on our increased connection with nature and the outdoors. For many families, their time outside has offered respite from hours spent inside and isolated from their friends and wider support networks. Children and families might be starting to feel more engaged with these spaces and see them as an extension of their world. Garden centres like Frost's have tried to keep up with the demand for seeds and equipment to enable us to start growing more fruit and vegetables. Country parks and farms have started to see unprecedented numbers of families visiting them and exploring footpaths and bridleways that had remained virtually undisturbed for years. We've started a relationship with our countryside, nature, wildlife and food and its origins that many of us didn't have before. But nature isn't just about geography, it's about a lot more than that. It's a proven fact that spending time in nature, even as little as 30 minutes a day, can improve our mood. It lowers our blood pressure and it makes us feel more relaxed. Being outside stimulates our children's senses as they feel the cold breeze on their faces or the sun on their backs, even the wind in their hair. Their sensations start to come alive and their brains start to relax. Encouraging more time outside, whether that's walking, exploring while doing a scavenger hunt, searching for mini beasts, or collecting resources for a craft project, all increase physical activity. This physical activity increases their appetite, and this in turn, hopefully, increases healthy eating. But more about this later. Healthy eating will help to maintain blood sugar and aids good quality sleep, so you can start to see where this is going. More than this though, being outside doesn't just improve our children's physical and mental health, it also helps them to regulate their emotions. The time to explore and play aids their overall well-being. Cognitively, they're going to learn more about their environment, the ecology of outside spaces and how these interconnect with birds, insects, wildlife and the codependency between those species. They'll learn about the changing seasons just by spending time outside throughout the year, and their food being produced locally. This raises awareness about where their food comes from and how it starts out before it lands on their plates. They can make a connection between wheat and flour and therefore bread. They can make a connection between cows and milk and, dare I say, burgers. The cow that eats the freshest, lushest grass is going to produce milk with the most nutrients and is also going to be living their best life. The hen that has a field or open space to roam around in is going to lay the best eggs and going to be happier and healthier than the hen that spends all day in a confined space. The comparison between the hen's life and their own life is an interesting one to discuss. This cognitive process starts to broaden their vocabulary and extend their language and communication. It builds their knowledge of the environment and enables them to understand why they shouldn't leave a gate open or shouldn't leave rubbish behind when they spend time in the countryside. Understanding the natural world improves their confidence when they access these spaces and they become more self-aware. It helps them to regulate their emotions and to exercise self-control because there's just space to be. Space where they can express themselves without feeling or looking silly. Some of their inhibitions will fall away and things will suddenly start to make sense. They'll feel a part of something greater than themselves. Their world has no walls. They are truly a part of it. They're connected. This shapes our children's internal ethics and attitudes. It encourages them to take care and to be responsible for their actions. And it's the whole experiential learning element that we spoke about last time. They understand why they shouldn't chop the heads off of flowers or trample over newly planted soil, because they understand that bees will rely on the flowers for their food and that lambs and sheep rely on grass and birds on hedgerows to survive. They're making those choices not because we are telling them, but because they care and value this space and have actual experience and knowledge of it themselves. These lessons will last a lifetime. They're lived experiences and not just things they're being told and will forget in a few days. The longevity of these experiences can be life-changing, literally. As children spend more time in nature, their creativity and imagination grow without adult supervision, and they become more able to self-support and develop resilience through play. They learn about risk, and we'll talk a bit more about risk later in this webinar. But seeking challenge, for example, in climbing a tree is something as a parent we may want to protect our child from, but these are essential activities to help build confidence, cope with failure, and contextualize risk through their own experience and not through some pseudo-virtual online one. As our children progress towards adulthood, their ability to assess environmental risk is an essential strategy to coping and on occasions to surviving. Contextual risk and our inbuilt ability to assess that is a basic human survival skill. And in a society where we're no longer safe from threats, even in our own homes, with online safety being one of the fastest growing safeguarding concerns, our children's self-confidence, their awareness, their ability to communicate, and simply just knowing when something isn't right can really be essential. These skills are all developed in the early years and are all assisted by access to the natural world. A child with low self-esteem is far more likely to engage with a stranger online who is showing them attention or paying them compliments than when their self-esteem is high. So I hope that you'll see that what starts with a simple habit like being outdoors and in nature on a regular basis is something that is building essential foundation for your child's future. And to deprive them of that to deprive them of that opportunity doesn't just deprive you of great shared memories, it also deprives them of lots of skills that can support them through life. Thank you for listening. I'm now going to pass you over to Rebecca. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rachel. So we spoke in webinar 1 about the benefits of learning how to breathe to aid relaxation. Today, we want to build upon that and share with you how to use breathing as a strategy to manage emotions in your child and as a de-escalation technique when behaviours start to get out of control. This time, with our breathing activity, we want you to imagine that you are at that school gate and your child is throwing a tantrum. It feels like every eye is focused upon you and your child, and the pressure upon how you act is raising your levels of anxiety. What will people be thinking about you, your child, you as a parent? Will you be judged on your ability to deal with this meltdown? This is a situation that we can all relate to, I'm sure. So we will now think about how we can use a small but very effective nature-led approach to help us in those situations. And this is breathing with nature. As we start to think about breathing, I'm going to share some images of natural spaces and scenes that I hope will allow your imagination to start to drift into the kind of environments that you can share with your child and the naturally occurring events or resources that can help you to practice effective breathing. When you are out in nature with your child, by starting to introduce breathing and focus on sensations around them as part of a regular routine can be helpful in lots of ways, and this will pay dividends when meltdowns or moments of anxiety occur and you want to calm your child down. When your child is outside, they are in a sensory environment. Drawing attention to that can help to connect your child more closely with their emotions that regulate their behaviour. So let's think about it. Laying on the ground, taking shoes and socks off and walking on the grass. Closing eyes, standing still to listening to the noises around, the birds, the trees, the wind. Drawing our child's attention to the warmth of the sun or the feel of the rain, the damp on the wet grass. Feeling the texture of a leaf or listening to the rustling or crunching of crisp autumn leaves underfoot. The smell of a flower or the reflection of the tree in a stream. The list and possibilities are endless, but the main thing here is to enable your child to start to explore their senses, and in doing this so aids relaxation and helps to regulate heart rate. From here, you can start to encourage your child to think about their breathing. Ask your child to lay, sit, stand, just be still for a while, to close their eyes if possible. Then start focusing on yours and their breathing. Slowly count and suggest that they breathe in when you do this. Keep your voice low, slow, and gently count to 4 as you encourage them to breathe in through their nose. As I suggested last time, you may want to use a dandelion head to help them to breathe out, slowly blowing the seeds away as you count to 4. Each time they breathe in and out, ask them to breathe a little more deeply and to concentrate on the dandelion or their breath. Ask them to think about their limbs going floppy or their body relaxing into the grass and the soft blanket of sunlight on their faces. On a frosty morning, you could use the cold air as they breathe out, and you can see their warm breath as they exhale. Practicing this at any point as often as possible will enable your child to feel calm and relaxed. It only needs to take a minute. Nature itself is a non-frenetic place to be and helps enormously with these kinds of activities. When the pace of life is so fast for so many of us, these breathing exercises become an essential part of a parental toolkit. This is an example of experiential learning where something learned and experienced in nature can really help as an effective strategy away from nature. Preparing to go to sleep, winding down at the end of the day, or just to help deal with hyperactivity. It's good for us to practice too, and only takes a minute, but recalibrates our thinking and gives us a pause, which is so often what we need before transitioning from one activity or experience to another. Imagine you're lying on soft grass, or remember that day when we stopped to watch our breath in the frosty air as we breathed in and out. Let's try to do that now. Imagine that you're lying on the soft grass and can feel the sun on your face. As you do this, think about your breathing as I count with you. Let your breathing match my voice. When we think about situations where a child's feelings spill over into actions, that moment may not be the right time to tackle the underlying cause of the breakdown. But teaching your child a breathing technique is one way to take some heat away from that red flag event and allow some time to pause and to calm down. So, back to the school playground and that tantrum at the gate. What could you do? Firstly, you could try to remove your child to a safe space where it's easier for you to get their attention and for them to focus on you rather than the situation. Crouch down to their level so you're talking directly to them. Your focus is on them and not the situation. Try to keep your movements, body language, and voice calm and quiet. Raised voices or erratic body movements raise levels of anxiety. Try to contain your child's physical movements by holding their hand, encouraging them to sit beside you. Distract them by mentioning something in the environment that their attention may be switched to. This could be the weather, tree, the birds, a small insect on the ground. Remind your child that loud voices can be scary for others, in particular little creatures that exist everywhere, and then try to encourage your child to breathe. If you've practiced breathing exercises when you're outside in nature, this is an ideal time to reflect on this activity. Remember when we laid on the grass before and we concentrated on our breathing? Well, I want you to stop for a second and think of that time. Let's count together, breathing in and counting as we breathe in through our nose. What can we smell? Try to concentrate really hard on smelling the fresh air and pulling our tummies in. Close your eyes if that's easier. Just reassure your child that you are right there with them. They are safe, and start to describe the time and place where you practiced this before. This is just one simple situation where attracting your child's attention by introducing some environmental sensory element. Look at the tree. Have you noticed a little butterfly on the flower there? Or doesn't that sun feel hot today? This attracts their attention for just long enough for you to start to talk them down and use the breathing technique. We are sure that you will find this to be one of the most universally useful tools in your toolbox. And through adolescence and into adulthood, good breathing practices can be used to cope with all kinds of stressful situations. I'm now going to hand you over to Gemma and Sam, who are going to talk to you about our nature-led activities.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everybody. I'm Gemma, a member of the Wildlife team, and I'm joined today by Sam as well. So hopefully we're going to now move on to sharing with you, and Sam's going to explain in a bit more detail, a bit more about a nature toolkit and what that might look like and might compromise of, and things that you can keep an eye to look out for.
Morning everyone. So a nature toolkit. As you can see, I'm surrounded by lots of really beautiful resources here. None of them have cost me any money, and they're all things that I have gathered up on local walks and strolls and trips into my own garden. So I'll just talk you through a few of those now. Over here I've got some feathers. Feathers are great because as I might have mentioned previously, this can lead to another activity where you actually do some bird identification when you get home, and there's some things that you can make out of them. You can use them as a mark maker. They lend themselves to lots of different activities. Children love collecting feathers, and they're quite plentiful as well. Down here I've got some red clover. Often you see clover on the garden lawn next to daisies. Daisies and red clover are edible. So again, picking these flowers leads to yet another activity. What else have I got here? I've got some gravel and stones that can be picked up from anywhere. Some lovely rosemary here that you could make a potion with. A real assault to the olfactory system there. One of my favourite smells. I've got, what else do I have here? I've got some stones. Stones are fantastic, can be collected from anywhere, can be painted and lend themselves to lots of activities. I've got some miniature conkers, really interesting texture, great to open up a conversation about texture and feelings. Some simple garden twine that you can pick up so cheaply from anywhere. I use that in a lot of the activities and crafts that I do. I've got pine cones, again, thinking about texture, great for numeracy, lend themselves to lots of activities. And I've got just compost soil from the garden, great for mud pies, mud painting. Leading me on to clothing for these activities. So I've got here a little pair of gardening gloves that I picked up. Some children absolutely love the texture of mud and rain and water and being outside. Some children don't like them. So a little pair of gardening gloves can go a long way. I've got scissors and a hole punch. A hole punch is fantastic to use with young children because you know they're completely safe. Obviously wellies and warm waterproof clothing, old clothing, it doesn't matter what it looks, what you look like when you're outside. Nature's not judging you. Just have fun, stay warm, and remember that wet dries.
And I think, thank you, Sam, I think also it's really, lots of these things are really easy to pick up. So whether you're out walking the dog, out on a bike ride, or actually driving, you'll be really surprised at how quickly children will start to identify things that they drive by, things that look a bit unusual, things that maybe look a bit different, and they will start to recognise things a bit more, which again in turn leads to those kind of conversations. So Rachel's previously touched on why nature. And I think if we think as to a time where maybe as adults we often say, oh, if only I had the time. And it might be, and it might not be, that perhaps lockdown has given you a little bit more time. It might be more time, less time. It might be time that looks very different. It might be varied time. But lots of friends of mine have said about actually how they're really enjoying this slower pace of life. And actually, you know, this time might be so much more precious than the time that you've had previously, or time where you're spending time, that quality time with your children that you might not have had before, and actually being a bit sort of caught unawares as to what to do with that time. So, and also I think for me personally, I thought a little bit like, actually, if I could bottle some of that time, what that would look like, and have that appreciation for it. So being outside allows for those boundaries to be explored a little bit further, gives you that bit more freedom. So imagine a child in that really big open space in that field, or even just simply in their back garden or front garden. It's a bit like that time where someone says to you, dance like nobody's watching. It allows for that little bit of creativity, that where you can gather your thoughts. And as we know, children process at different speeds, depending on their development. And actually, you know, there shouldn't necessarily be that pressure where children have to conform in a certain way in society. And unfortunately, sometimes they can fall into that kind of pathway. So we can be those kind of responsible role models where we can actually increase the awareness for the appreciation of the environment around them. And I always think that nature breeds curiosity. So it helps us to grow explorers rather than robots. Reminds us that they're part of something a lot bigger and can contribute so much more, which gives us an element of grounding, which hopefully some of the breathing side of the webinar that Rebecca shared with you has kind of started to drip feed some of that thought process into maybe how you go about your day-to-day life. I think it's really important that time and that taking that step back into nature has allowed appreciation for a lot more. Just recognising more birds perhaps in your garden. I know friends of mine have said how their children are noticing more birds, but actually it's also thinking about, you know, actually how we can relate that to our senses. So a quick game of where you think of a letter from the alphabet and you think about 5 things associated with our senses. So it offers a bit of grounding, it offers some appreciation, and in turn responsibility to our children, which if we can install those kind of traits from a young age, think about what society could look like with children with that changed mindset. So if we also can start to appreciate a little bit more as adults and instill that into our children, what kind of world would we live in time? So in a minute, we're going to look at 2 videos. The first video we've named as a wildlife team as Sticks and Stones, which is a fun interactive video, which I'm hoping will give you a little bit of an indication as to how you can talk through some feelings with friendship groups for your children, but also as a family. It's really open to interpretation, and hopefully in just a second the link will be copied into the chat and you will be able to have a look at that video for a few minutes, and then once you have watched it, if you then come back to the Zoom link and we will continue. Thank you, Charlotte.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope it's given you a bit of a snapshot into how that particular activity can be used. Obviously you can adapt it for your own use. It's really easy as a family group or friendship group to fall into negative stereotyping, and that activity really just allows us to take a step back and think about all the things we appreciate about each other.
Okay, thank you. So in just a second, we're about to watch the second video, which we have titled Woodland Dragons. Again, it's simple, it's fun, but it encourages hopefully those conversations where children might feel a little bit more comfortable doing something through a mark making activity, which younger children, we know mark making can allow a bit more freedom, ways to express themselves. So hopefully on a bigger scale, which we'll see in just a second, it will encourage that kind of freedom and creativity, and then in turn conversations around some of those feelings and emotions. Just like the first video, in a second the link will be put into the chat for you to follow, and please could you do the same again, enjoy the video and then join us back on here for the next part. Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the Woodlands Dragons video, and hopefully again that's given you a bit of an insight into how that activity can be used. Now I chose dragons, you can choose any animal. I simply chose that because of the lovely textured bark of that tree. Getting outside in nature with your children and completing an activity like that together really just sort of, it removes the table between the two of you, so those discussions can take place in a far more natural, in a natural way, without any pressure, and they will eventually become it will become a very organic process, having those conversations without the added pressure of, like I say, a table between the two of you.
Thank you. So hopefully those videos have given you an indication of how they might support your family and your children, but also I think it's really important to note that they can be adapted as well. So they can be made a bit more simple, they could be made a little bit more complex, and they're adaptable to different emotions and feelings. So if perhaps those videos you think are a really great idea, if that was something you were experiencing, perhaps think about ways you might be able to adapt them so that they're a little bit more suitable to maybe how you would like to improve the well-being of your family. So if we think back to the previous webinar, hopefully now you've completed the Web of Wellbeing on yourself, which has helped you to identify some areas that you can start to think about as a family, but also ways that you can utilise some of the tips and ideas and videos that we've started to share as a team. And I think, remember, the one thing I think I'll hold on to forever will be just the fun element of it. I think that so much comes when people enjoy themselves as adults, but as children, so much fun comes from something that's been created in a really fun, holistic way, allowing imaginations to run wild, allows for creativity. And think back to, you know, how many memories do you hold as a child that are related to an experience that was fun and enjoyable? So imagine capturing that and having that freedom to be outside, using things that are in that kind of non-bounded environment where you can just let creativity and imagination run, but also knowing the impact that that has on your state of mind as well, and your child's kind of openness into appreciating what is around them. So if you think back to webinar 1, where I shared how it's really logical and often very common where we think about children's behaviours, how we can be drawn to looking at what the behaviour is that's being presented rather than the emotion that is behind it. So we shared with you the root and fruit diagram. And I think if you've had a chance to think about some of the areas as a family, or what's been highlighted from the Web of Wellbeing for yourself, but also for your child or your children, by using nature, we can try and hopefully kindle some of that enthusiasm. And if we can develop concern through some of these activities for others, i.e. nature, then what that can do in turn to society, so, but also to your family, to your own home environment. So these kind of experiences and being with nature and being outside and some of the activities that we've shared with you today, I'm hoping that these experiences will encourage children, which is what we aim to do, and I'm sure you do, encourage children to have that kind of sense of self-discovery, self-expression and enjoyment that's not only fulfilling but really stimulating. And I think just before moving on to the next part and handing over to Jen in just a few seconds, if we want children to flourish and become really empowered, then we need to let them love what's around them, so that appreciation for nature. And if once they've got that part, then we then don't need to ask them to save it. So I'm just going to leave you with that thought and pass over to Jen, who I believe is cooking up a storm in her Wild for Life kitchen. So over to you, Jen.
Thanks, Gemma. I'm here today in the Wild for Life kitchen, and I'm here with the sous chef who's just returning. There we go. This is Lizzie. She's my sous chef today, and she's going to be helping us in the kitchen. We're going to be talking to you a little bit about foraging, and we're going to be doing a live cookery demonstration as well. So hopefully lots of fun. So do you know what foraging is, Lizzie? You got any idea? Have you ever been blackberry picking or anything like that? No.
We haven't yet, but we're going to on the blackberries already.
Are you? Well, there you go. So if you don't know what foraging is, it's basically going out into the countryside, any green space, woodland, it could be anywhere that's green and wild and free, and going and gathering natural produce that you can use back at home and incorporate into your cooking, or you could use it for medicinal or therapeutic purposes as well. There's loads and loads of things out in the wild that we can use for cooking that are full of nutrients, that are full of vitamins, and are really, really delicious. And as I said, have lots of therapeutic qualities as well. The best thing about foraging is that you can do it all year round. There's things in season all the time, and it changes constantly. So for instance, in spring, you can go out and collect lots of young leaves, you can collect shoots, there's buds, there's lots of blossom that you can incorporate into your cooking and use in different ways. In the summer, you start to get lots of berries coming out, you get things like cherries and other bits and pieces like that. And as you move further into the summer, into late summer, you start to get crab apples, you get blackberries, you get rose hips, the elderberries start to come out, lots of things like that that you can bring home and make into jams and crumbles and exciting things. And then as you get into autumn, this is when there's lots of really earthy things that you can go and collect. You've got some nuts and chestnuts and mushrooms. It's really, really exciting time for foraging. It's a fantastic thing to do as a family. It's a really adventurous thing to do as a family. You can incorporate it into your normal walks, and it just adds a bit of a twist. So if you normally go on bug hunts or scavenger hunts when you're out, then it just creates a little bit more of a twist. So it's just more rewarding. It's kind of a sensory experience as well, because you're touching things, you're smelling things, you're tasting things as you go along, and you can bring it back and you can create something that's delicious with the family. Also, it's lots of nutrition for the family as well. You can start to talk about things like healthy eating habits. You can talk about how to be adventurous with your eating habits as well. Lots of children can be a bit fussy, so it's a great way to introduce them to different tastes and textures. It's also a fantastic way of talking about plant life and how it supports nature, how it supports wildlife, life cycles, all those things that are really important. And great for learning and great for homeschooling as well. So there's a few rules that you have to think about when you go out foraging. The first one is that you should never pick anything that you're unsure of. If you don't know what it is, do not pick it. Now, whilst there's loads of delicious, edible, fantastic things out there in the wild, there are also quite a few toxic things. And Lizzie, do you know what toxic means? No. Toxic means it's going to make you really, really poorly if you eat it. Yeah. Also, there's plenty of things out there that even if you just touch them, they're going to hurt you, or they might cause inflammation, or they might sting you. So you've got to be really, really careful. I'm going to give you a quick example. So at the moment, there's loads of hogweed and giant hogweed and hemlock about. Now, they all look very, very similar to cow parsley. And cow parsley is completely edible from top to bottom. You can eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers. Hemlock is incredibly toxic, and hogweed and giant hogweed will burn you and cause blisters all over your hands if you touch it. So you don't want to go anywhere near that. And there's lots of that along footpaths at the moment, so you've got to be really careful. Okay, so now we're going to move on and introduce the thing that we're going to be cooking with today. You excited? Yeah? So what we've chosen is something that is plentiful. You can get hold of it anywhere. It's something you should recognise easily and be very aware of when you're out on walks, and it's something that you probably try to avoid most of the time because there's a bit of a danger element. Shall I show them what we're going to use? So it's these.
Stinging nettles.
Stinging nettles, that's right, Lizzie. Yes, they're stinging nettles. Now, why do we have to be careful of stinging nettles?
Because they'll sting you.
They will sting you, yes. They've got lots of little barbs all over them on the leaves and along the stems, and if you touch them, the barbs will go into your skin, and they've got formic acid, and they've got lots of other chemicals that will cause inflammation and lots of little bumps, don't they, when you touch them. And it can be a bit sore for a little while, but then they do go away. Do you know what you can use to get rid of stinging nettles when you're out in the wild?
I know what it is, but I don't know what it's called.
I can't remember. It's called a dock leaf. You remember that? Yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you can give it a go. They're usually found near nettles. So we've chosen nettles for lots of different reasons. As I said, they're plentiful, they're everywhere, they're easily recognised, so it's a great way to introduce you and your family to foraging. They're in gardens often, if you're not keeping up with the gardening, or if you've got a little wild area. So if you're shielding and you have a garden, then you can get hold of them as well. They're also in urban areas, in parkland, in fields and woodlands. They're really, really accessible. They're also incredibly versatile. They can be used in sauces, they can be used in soups, in stews, you can bake them, you can crisp them up. There's just hundreds of different things you can do with them. And the best thing about them is they're a superfood, like a blueberry or something like that. They're basically like eating a multivitamin tablet. Do you have to take those every day? No.
Mr. Men ones every day.
Mr. Men, that sounds very exciting. So they're packed full of nutrients and antioxidants. They contain vitamins A, vitamin C, vitamin K, B vitamins. They've got things like beta carotene in. Oh, you need vitamin D at the moment, don't you? There's no D in these though. They've also got all the amino acids in them, and they are supposedly really good as an anti-inflammatory. They can potentially reduce enlarged prostate glands. They are great for menopause. They can also reduce blood sugar levels. So they're amazing superfood, fantastic, and they're free, which is brilliant. As I said before, there's a bit of a danger element when you go out to pick them. When I go out with my children, we like to pretend we're on a bit of a Bear Grylls mission. Do you know who Bear Grylls is? He's like an adventurer, an explorer. He eats lots of crazy things when he's out. I bet he would eat a stinging nettle, yeah, I bet he loves stinging nettles. It's probably one of the nicer things that he eats, to be honest. So we go out and we pretend that we're Bear Grylls, and we take our survival packs with us full of protective gear, including gloves to make sure we don't get stung, some scissors, a bag to collect our stuff up in, and some long sleeves. And we turn it into a bit of a game. And this is a great thing to do with your children, especially if you've got slightly younger children, to interact with them through imaginative play is really great for their development. And it just makes things fun. It's a different way of doing it. So it's worth giving that a try. Anyway, should we get on with the cooking? So I've been talking a lot, haven't I? Yes. Right, so today we're going to make, you remember what we're making?
Pesto.
Pesto. We're going to make wild nettle pesto. Now, we've chosen this because it's a really versatile thing to make. It's really child friendly, it's really easy to make, and you can keep it in your fridge for up to 2 weeks. If you store it in an airtight container, just keep topping it up with oil. And you can use it on pasta, and you can use it on bread, toasted bread. It's like an alternative to garlic bread. You could use it on potatoes. You could boost the flavour of soups, all sorts of things. It's really, really useful to have in your cupboard. So, shall we run through the ingredients? You're going to help me? Yeah? Okay. So, first of all, we've got this. What's that? Cheese. Now,
Which I love.
you love cheese. That's good. Cheese is very good for you. It's got lots of calcium in. So, this is just cheddar. You can use any hard cheese. It doesn't matter what it is. You could use a dairy-free or a vegan alternative as well. Or you could go traditional and use something like Parmesan. But cheddar is great. It's something we have in the fridge a lot of the time. Do you know what these are, Lizzie? Or you have a select drink? Sunflower seeds. Well done. So we're using sunflower seeds. Traditionally, you'd use pine nuts. You can use any sort of nuts, really. Hazelnuts are great. Walnuts are also really tasty. You could also use almonds as well. And if you've got a nut allergy, some children do, don't they? Then you could use something like breadcrumbs instead. So it's really adaptable. Now, do you know what these are?
Baby bells.
Baby bells. They look a little bit like baby bells. They're actually garlic cloves. We've got 2 garlic cloves there, and I've blanched them in some hot water for a couple of minutes just to soften them slightly so they're easier to cut, and also just to soften the flavour so you don't have that harsh astringent flavour you sometimes get with raw garlic. We've also got some salt and pepper for seasoning. Yeah, and what's that? Lemon. We've got half a lemon. And do you know what this is in here?
Orange juice.
Orange juice or oil. This is rapeseed oil. We've gone British, but you could use olive oil or any other oil that you'd use to drizzle on salads. And then do you know what this gungy looking stuff is?
Broccoli.
Broccoli? No, this is our nettles. So they start off like this, and then we prepare them so they're like that. And I'm going to go through the preparation of the nettles in a second. Right, now, what I want you to do is to take the nettles, okay? And no, they're not going to sting you. And the garlic, and you can use that knife. She's just using a regular dinner knife, which doesn't have any sharp edges. And you can use both your hands, and I just want you to try and chop them up really finely if you can. You can do that. So we're going to talk about the preparation of the nettles now, so that it gets to this form. So when you bring the nettles home, you need to go and give them a big rinse to get rid of all the dirt and any little bugs or little butterfly eggs or anything like that that's hanging around on them. And then just keep chopping, chopping, chopping. Make it you hold them with both your hands. Make it easier. There you go. Then you need to plunge the nettles into some boiling hot water for about 5 minutes. And what this does, it breaks down the barbs and it breaks down the acids and stops it from becoming stingy. And then you take it out, rinse it with cold water and strain it. And then you need to take it in your hands over the sink and squeeze out every single drop of water that you can, so that it becomes a big dry block of, I was going to say spinach then, of nettles like that. It looks a bit like wilted spinach. And then you can pull out any hard stems that are sticking out. Doing a good job there. And then it's in this consistency, which is perfect. Okay, right. While she's just finishing that, I'm going to show you how we're going to make our pesto. Now, we're using a pestle and mortar today. You could use a blender, but a pestle and mortar is a really child-friendly piece of equipment for your kitchen. You can use it inside or outside because there's no electricity needed. And it's really fun because you can do lots of bashing with it. It's also a really therapeutic tool for children. Lots of children are feeling really frustrated at the moment from being stuck at home, the lack of variety in their lives, the lack of stimulation and challenge, and they're often taking it out on us, the people that care about them most. So what they can do is they can imagine all the things that they're frustrated about and put them in the bottom of the pestle included, and imagine that the nettles and all the other ingredients, those frustrations, and they can push them away and really take it out in the pestle and mortar in a very safe and controlled way. We're not promoting violence at all, but that's very good. But it's a really good way of getting them to open up about their feelings and how they're feeling, and get them to really get rid of those feelings of frustration. Right, are you ready to do some bashing? Yeah? Right, what I need you to do is put your nettles into here. Okay, and all the garlic. Shall I help you a bit? Yeah? And then I'll tell you what, I'll get the garlic up. You put all the other ingredients in there, apart from the oil, not the oil yet. That's it, that's fine. So sunflower seeds, tip those in. You squeeze some lemon in. Can you know how to use that? I'll put it up here for you. It's quite tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Use those muscles. That's okay. Yeah? And then a big pinch of salt. So I've got that. Big pinch of salt. Brilliant. And then a pinch of pepper as well. And then we're going to add some herbs. Oh, yes, you can wash your hands, that's fine. Then we're going to add in some herbs. We've got some sage here, but you could use any sort of herbs from your garden or whatever you're growing in your windowsill. I like sage because it's really child friendly. They eat it in sausages and things like that, so they're quite familiar with the flavour. So we're going to rip that up a bit and add some sage in. Right, now you're going to do some bashing. Now, what have you been frustrated about during lockdown? What's been annoying you? What have you missed most or missed doing?
Missed doing ballet.
You've missed doing ballet and
But
rainbow?
I've been doing rainbows. Cool.
Yeah, okay. Well, think about all those things that really annoyed you or upset you or made you feel a bit sad, and bash them away in that pot. Really bash it. This is made from granite. It's a really hard rock, so it's not going to break. Just keep bashing until it's nice and smooth paste. Now, this is a really good thing. Cooking is really good to do with children. Well, it's quite explosive because it forms a bit of a distraction, and it means that you can talk to them about lots of different things. It's a bit like going into like a confession box or something like that. You've got a barrier between you, so it makes it easier to open up. Foraging itself is also a great metaphor to open up discussions on some quite difficult subjects as well. You have to take risks when you go foraging. You have to, you can't push barriers. You have to, oh gosh, it's quite hard work, isn't it? You have to follow instructions, and you have to be really careful, because otherwise there's consequences. So it's a really good opportunity to talk about those sorts of subjects to your children. You can, especially things like risk. You can start to ask them about risky situations, they're aware of in their life, how they would deal with that. It's very noisy. Things like online threats, maybe stranger danger, crossing roads, things like that. You can start to talk to them about quite serious things going on in their life, things that you want to open up discussion on. Okay, that's looking great. I'm going to add in some oil. Big glug of oil there. Oh my goodness! Oh no, you're right. Do you want to get that towel there? Right, this is quite, as I said, it's lots of fun. It's also a bit messy, you're right. Okay, this is what live cookery demonstrations do for you. Cause lots of stress. I don't think this happens on Blue Peter with Nigella. Right, Lizzie's just disappeared to just go and get sorted out because she's covered in oil. I'll carry on. So what we've got here is some pasta. You okay? Okay, that's fine. Do you want to put your pesto onto the pasta? And pesto pasta is something that lots of children are familiar with. They have it in restaurants, often on children menus. It's something quick and easy to make in the evenings when they get back from school. Right, and then give it a big stir, or yeah, mix it all together. And then I want you to pour it into this bowl. There, that's perfect. Right, into the bowl. And then we're just going to garnish it very quickly with a few clover from the garden. So you pick the petals, and we've got daisies as well, so pick the petals and the clover. I've also got some thyme flowers as well, so we're just going to sprinkle some of those on as well and just make it look really pretty. Lovely. You can just leave that, I think, just the petals. Okay, right, are you going to taste a little bit, Lizzie, and see what you think?
Okay.
She's never tasted pesto before. Very brave. What do you think? Good? Good. She likes it, we think. And there you go. That's your pesto, wild pesto pasta. Now, if you want to find more recipe ideas, go onto our website or go onto our Instagram page. There's lots of information about nutritional values of things that you can forage as well. We'll also be sending out a recipe card with all the quantities and instructions. Oh, she likes it. And that'll be going out to you after the session. So thank you from me and Lizzie. A bit messier now after this. And I'm going to hand back over to Gemma.
Great, thank you, Jen. That looked like lots of fun, the joys of live cooking. So hopefully that made you smile, if nothing else, but also gave you an idea of something really simple, really easy to be able to create at home. So as we're coming almost to a close to today's webinar, I'm hoping that you have spent the last, or since first meeting us and meeting the team, that you've been able to assess your own well-being. Perhaps been able to identify the importance of self-care before thinking about caring about those around you. It would be really great if you've been able to complete the web of wellbeing on your children as well. And perhaps it's given you some thoughts and some ideas and a bit of appreciation as to how you can begin to enjoy enhancing a family life together with a different spin, hopefully from some of the spin-offs from us. So where next? So before handing over to Rachel in just a few seconds, I'd like you just to think about some sort of observation and reflection time. So commonly known as quiet time, an area really disregarded quite often in such a busy world, where actually we need to think about and really reap the benefits from that time if we dedicate time to it. So it comes back to, I think, my message from right at the start of this webinar around that quality time and around how time being appreciated. And time between thinking about how that what that looks like for our children and for the younger generation. So by allowing children time and dedicating that quiet time allows them kind of to think about transition between tasks. So perhaps transitions between the day. So what's different to a morning, an afternoon and an evening, but also transition, thinking maybe back going into school. September, although there's a lovely summer holiday ahead, you know, September's going to look very different. Now is looking very different. It also allows us rest and renew. So thinking about that time to recharge, but also thinking about how it supports the emotional process. We've said before about how children process their emotions and their feelings very differently and at a very different pace. So it allows that really valuable skill of being able to be alone in their own thoughts, processing what that actually looks like, what that means. And quiet time might look really different in every different household. It might be quiet time where you're alone. It might be quiet time that is simply looking, sitting in the garden, appreciating the sounds and smells around you, or enjoying a story together. As adults, we're really good at, or hopefully becoming better. I know I'm, somebody that is getting better at thinking about reflecting on myself and having the awareness of what comes with that time when it's appreciated. But perhaps it might not be something that you've considered before, what quality time looks like in your house, or for your children, or for you as a family. But before we can begin to appreciate it, maybe you could think about some self-care activities, ones that you can do as a family, things that you can promote time for, that special quiet time. And I think it's really important just to leave you on the note of how it's really important that we all allow ourselves that self-maintenance time, not only for us as adults, but also for our children, because it really does matter. So thank you very much. I am now going to hand you over to Rachel.
Thanks, Gemma. Really, I just want to sum up by saying thank you for attending the second webinar. I hope that during the time between now and Monday that you will get the opportunity to try out some of the activities that have been demonstrated today, and maybe collect some natural resources or pop into Frost at the weekend to pick up some goodies and to give some things a try. We'd love to see any photos of things that you've been doing, or if you want any more ideas about how to go wild with your family, then check out our websites, our Instagram, or visit those of our delivery partners, Frost Garden Centres and Greensand Country. So next time we'll be looking at who can help us, so signposting you to other organisations that can maybe help to support you as a family and your child, and also thinking about branching out with nature, so how we can take nature to the next level as a family, and basically think about exploring further afield and maybe being a bit more adventurous. So in the meantime, we'll leave the chat open for a while if you want to ask any questions, or if you want to make any comments about today's webinar, which would be really great. We'd love to get your feedback. And just a reminder that we'll send you a link out for the final webinar on Monday, 24 hours before. And in the meantime, have loads of fun trying out some of the activities. I think that's it. Give us a shout if there is anything else that you want to know for us. Okay, bye-bye. Hmm.